Welcome to Season 2, Episode 4 of the MJ Sports Podcast. My name is Mark, and I'm joined by Jonas, and this is your week of sports in review.
Sports. 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 Woo! And we are back once again to celebrate another week of the sweet, sweet sports and the sweet, sweet return of hopefully warm weather. Hopefully it sustains. I think winter is over, at least here in the Midwest maybe, as the temperatures climb back into the 40s, into the 50s, to the 60s. One day, even this week, hit 70. So, yeah, the weather needs to stay as hot as we are, Mark, because we got it going. We got it going today.
Well, it's a little hotter where you're at. We still haven't got out of the 40s, but...
Hey, it's better than -7.
Well, that's a fair point,
But yeah. Well, Mark, I gotta tell you, I'm excited for the first time this year about the Duke Blue Devils. Because this week, since we last spoke, we upset Virginia by 1 point. We then beat, just a couple days ago, the Syracuse Orange. And that makes us 4 wins in a row to improve to 11-8, going from 7-8 to 11-8. And I gotta tell you, Mark, this might be a little controversial here, but remember when we were talking about that Alabama coach that was said, oh, maybe Coach K doesn't have it, he wants to cancel the season, maybe that's because he doesn't feel like he can win with this team. Well, thinking to these last few games that we haven't had Jalen Johnson, our top player, and we've been winning, I think Coach K might have lost some of his touch, not going to lie. Because if we can win without this guy, why, if we're playing so much better without this guy, why would Coach K keep playing him? Like, I understand he's supposed to be the best player, right? But, I mean, it seems to me like either Coach K has lost some of his touch, or he's focused more on getting players to the NBA than actually making a college basketball team that can win the national championship. And I know you're kind of supposed to do both, but I don't know. And I can kind of bring up some, when we had Zion and RJ Barrett, it seemed like against that Michigan State in the Elite Eight of the tournament, in the going down the stretch, Zion was out at the 3-point line instead of on the inside, just feeding him the ball. They were going to RJ Barrett a lot instead of just passing it to Zion every possession. I just think, I don't know. This is kind of scaring me with Coach K as far as his ability to keep coaching. I don't know what you think here.
look, I mean, I think this is just a little bit of a different Duke team than Coach K was expecting, this year he doesn't have a Demetric Trice or a Brad Davidson or a Nate Reavers or, any good players like that. He's been stuck with Jalen Johnson, who is done at this point.
Thank goodness, because he was holding us back apparently.
And by the way, if you don't know any of those players who I just mentioned, those are some of Wisconsin's.
Yes, and that's why they keep
players.
losing.
Hey, the Big Ten's just a better league, okay? No, I mean, I don't know. I feel like it's still a little bit early. I feel like this was a weaker recruiting class for Duke, coming in initially. And, I mean, it is fair to say maybe Coach K, he might have taken 1 step back, but he could also take 2 steps forward next year. I mean, you just never know. It was a little bit of a different, beginning to this season. Probably didn't have as much time to work with the team ahead of time going into the season as he normally has. Probably didn't have as much time, seeing some of these guys in person before the season. So I don't know. I think the more important indicator is going to be seeing how Duke finishes up the year, rather than focusing on how they started the year, because that's kind of how you. I think that's a better way to evaluate teams and their coaches.
I guess. I'm kind of curious if Jalen Johnson wouldn't have opted out, if we still would be playing him as much, and I don't know. It's
Here,
interesting to me.
here's the thing: you're used to Duke getting to a very hot start out of the gate, and I'm used to the Badgers usually starting out pretty slow out of the gate and improving throughout the season. So, granted, I haven't been watching Duke basketball or following it as closely as you have, but I don't know. I'll be curious to see where they end up, and I think it'll be a little more fair to make an assumption, once we come to the end of the regular season here.
Yeah, I'm just hoping right now. I think what's his face that does the brackets for ESPN. Not that he's 100% correct, but I think after the Syracuse win, he had us as the first four out. Personally, I would say right now we would probably be in it just based off of the brand and all that. Uh, but yeah, I think it'll be interesting if we can make the tournament as like an 8 or 9 seed, and maybe we upset a 1 seed or something. Assuming we win the first game or even get in at all. But the way we've been playing, I would think we could probably get in. But yeah, and I don't know. I guess a few other interesting games from the college basketball world. I think. Michigan, number 3, beat Ohio State, number 4. And I don't know. I think you're right. Last week I think we were talking about Michigan. I think Michigan could really be in the conversation along with Gonzaga and Baylor at this point.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I think I've mentioned Michigan in about 3 different episodes now. Um, every time I see them, I mean, they play real solid, and they're just about as physical as anybody on the defensive, side of the court. I mean, I agree with what you said there. I think they are, kind of creeping into that conversation now of, you know, they might have a real shot this year. So
Yep, yep. Another one yesterday. Texas beat Kansas in overtime. And I mean, honestly, one of the few things that brings me joy in the college basketball world is seeing Kansas and Kentucky lose. As I'm sure it brings lots of other people joy to see Duke lose. But yeah, Texas, the Big 12 looks pretty good too. I think some of the Big 12 teams are overrated, not going to lie. I mean, like Texas and Kansas have 6, 7 losses and are in the top 25. Syracuse, uh, going into, I guess, after the Duke loss, are now 13-7, and they have them not even in the tournament. So I get the ACC is not super strong this year, but to me, just seeing 7 and 8 lost Big 12 teams being ranked, it's like I I don't necessarily get that as much, but I don't. Do you think the Big 12 is ranked appropriately?
I don't know. It's always hard to tell during the regular season. I mean, personally, I still think. I mean, I haven't followed the Big 12 as closely as you probably have. I know you've probably got a little bit more of a vested interest in them. I mostly follow Big 10 basketball, so I don't feel like I really have a fair comment on it. But
I got you. Well, it just seems like Oklahoma is ranked like I think they're like number 9 or something like that. Texas Tech, Texas, obviously Baylor's great. Kansas. I don't know. Just
I think some of these teams have big name recognition, but they're not. They don't quite live up to some of their hype. But I mean, you could probably say the same thing about some of some of the lower end of some of the Big Ten teams that are ranked. I mean, I think Michigan looks pretty good. I mean, honestly, and I mean the Illini got knocked off by Michigan State the other day, but they've been playing really well in the Big Ten lately. I mean, they've looked good. I'm hesitant to throw a ton of support behind them because they've had plenty of collapses and mediocre seasons over the years. Um, I can't say I'm I think Wisconsin's going to finish the year strong, but I can't say I feel as confident about this team as I have in some of the past. So, I don't know. I think for the Big Ten, I think Michigan's probably the real deal there. But
yeah, I'll be interested to see because I think this might be one of the first years where because I mean, on average, it seems like maybe at most 6 or 7 teams from the same conference get in the tournament. But the Big Ten has what, like 14 teams, or is it 12?
I'm looking it up right
I
now.
can't remember how many you guys have in basketball because I know some basketball teams they don't have a football team and whatnot. But I don't know. It seems like everyone from the Big Ten is going to make the tournament.
Okay.
But
So the Big Ten has 14 teams.
okay, I thought so.
So
Yeah, it seems like you guys are going to have like 10 teams make it.
So my guess is at this point. So you've got Michigan who's 16-1. You've got Illinois 16-6, Ohio State 18-5, Iowa 17-6, Purdue 15-8, Wisconsin 16-8, Maryland's 14-10, Rutgers, they got off to a strong start there, but they're at 12-9 now. Um, Indiana's 12-10, Michigan State's 12-9. They really helped themselves with that big win over the Illini, but we'll see how this shakes up. Minnesota's 13-10. So I mean everybody's got a winning record aside from Penn State who's 8-12, Northwestern who's 6-14, and Nebraska who's 5-16.
Yeah, I mean, I would say you guys for sure got 6 teams in the tournament. The other 5, depending on what happens down the stretch. But I mean, if you guys have 8 teams in the tournament, I don't know. It seems like the more like I'd be interested to see if very many of them played each other in the tournament and how it all pans out. And same thing with the Big 12. I think there's only 10 Big 12 teams though, so obviously you can't have too many of them are going to get in. But it's always interesting to see whenever one conference just has a ton of teams. And to me, I hate when Duke has to play another ACC team in the tournament because it's like you're playing them for probably the third, maybe fourth time if you play them in the ACC tournament. Because we played Virginia Tech a couple years ago and we had Zion and barely won that game, and it was like, why was Virginia Tech in our bracket to begin with? So that probably helps Wisconsin out though, unless you play Michigan. Because it seems like you guys always get gritty against your rivals.
I mean, that's the Big Ten's just really. I mean, all the good teams in the Big Ten are gritty, and I mean honestly, like, we threw in those top 6 teams. I'd say the top 6 teams that are probably a lock to get in are Michigan, Illinois, Ohio State, Iowa, Purdue, and Wisconsin. But like, even when you throw teams like Minnesota, is a team that really annoys me because they always. I mean, there's a big rivalry between Wisconsin and Minnesota. They just play the Badgers tough. I know they're probably right now. I mean, they're probably not looking at the tournament, but even like teams like Michigan State, always tough. Indiana is always a tough matchup. Maryland. I mean, when you're playing a Big Ten matchup, you don't typically see a lot of blowouts. Like when I watch Wisconsin play, aside from we've pretty much been blown out by Michigan twice this year. Um, I hope I don't have to witness that a third time, but um, you know. So I think Michigan's the one team in the Big Ten I really don't want to see. I think the Badgers have a chance against all the others. But
Yeah, I mean, like if you guys are in the tournament, which I don't know what you're going to be, I would say probably 5, 6 seed right now. Um, but you wouldn't play him in the main tournament until probably the third round anyway, if you were in the same bracket. But yeah, I'm just excited there is a bracket this year. Hopefully,
yeah, I
knock
think
on wood on that, I guess.
I'm pretty sure I saw that they're planning on letting 25% capacity at this point
Oh,
in
and
the
I don't know if we've
games.
said this before, but it's all going to be in Indianapolis, I
Yep,
believe.
yep.
So, yep,
They've they've
no,
they've got a there's plenty of venues in Indianapolis, so it makes it a good spot. And
I would say if you're going to go to the NCAA tournament, this year would be the year to go because you could see every game just about.
yeah, maybe I'll see how the season finishes up, and maybe I'll go out there for a Wisconsin game. But
It would be nice because yeah, that'd be nice. But well, you want to shift to maybe a little MLB.
well, I do have one last bit of
Oh,
NCAA.
yeah. Oh, yes,
Um,
yes.
and once again, this comes back to the NCAA football video game. Notre Dame announced that they are not going to allow their team or any of their branding to be in the game um, until there's like legislation or actual rules set out in place for players to be able to profit off of their likeness. Now, right now, the plan in place, and I think we mentioned this last time, is that you know EA is signed. They are acquiring rights through a company to like use the school branding, school stadiums, but they're not going to use player likeness at this time. Obviously, I think that's probably they plan to acquire that at some point down the road, but in this initial release, it doesn't sound like that's the plan. And so, it sounds like Notre Dame is, holding out to, try to wait for their players to be able to profit off of it a little bit, which is a big blow to, the game because, Notre Dame's a well-recognized school name. If you have an iconic team like Rutgers, out of the game, obviously, people aren't going to be quite as upset, but there's a lot of Notre Dame fans out there, so. But just thought I'd bring that up. We'll see how this develops. I imagine there's probably going to be a few other schools who do things like this, but we'll see. Or maybe EA works to negotiate with Notre Dame on the side.
Yeah, well, I'm not too concerned as far as that goes because I just don't like Notre Dame, especially in football. So,
Just join a conference. Jeez.
I know.
But, well, that's enough video game talk. We'll slide on into the MLB, and man, am I getting excited because every day we're one day closer to the start of the season.
That's right.
You know,
Just a little over a month away now.
yeah, right now we're seeing, we're starting to see footage of, pitchers and catchers, people starting to get stretched out, getting ready for spring training games. We're also seeing, some final roster moves here and there. I guess, there was a player that's near and dear to Jonas's heart, who's going to be missing in action this season. Jonas, would you like to talk about that?
I know this is very depressing news because his one great season for the Texas Rangers just got him such a massive contract for the Colorado Rockies, which another great decision by Colorado, Ian Desmond is deciding to opt out for the second straight year because he's wants to be with family. I don't even know if it's because of the virus at this point, but he just says he wants to be with his family. So good on him. I mean, he has plenty of money for doing absolutely nothing the last 2 years in Colorado. Although his second year, he hit like 250, some home runs, handful of home runs. He was decent.
He's had some injuries too.
Yeah, so really, honestly, if I was him, I would just retire at this point. I don't know who else would want him if he's not gonna play. I don't even know when his contract's up. I think he signed like a 4-year deal. So
I know the Rockies have an option they can pick up on him next season if they want, but I don't remember what it was. But when I saw what the option was, they're not gonna accept that. This is probably the end for Ian Desmond.
Yeah.
So
what a sad reality we live in. The one smart move the Rangers made, not giving him $80 million or whatever it was. So.
And then there was another move, and for Red Sox fans, this might be a little sad just because he was a homegrown talent, but Andrew Benintendi was traded to the Royals, which personally I think is, I see a lot of people, Benintendi hasn't exactly developed the power that a lot of people thought he would have when he came up. Now, granted, you got to remember this guy's still pretty young. Like, he's still got plenty of time, and he's still a good contact hitter. Like, it's not like the guy's a bad player by any means. I mean, he's definitely more suited for a platoon role, but I think this is a good move by the Royals personally.
Yeah, I honestly didn't even know this happened until we just got curious and started looking at the Royals roster for no reason. But yeah, I was like, what in the Benintendi is on the Royals now? When did this happen? But yeah, I agree with you, Mark. I think it's a good move. I hope he can get back to playing good because he's a guy I think most people enjoy watching. He's kind of somebody you wouldn't necessarily expect to be great at baseball or anything. So, I don't know. I hope he can return to form. It would really benefit the Royals if he did. So,
and I do have one. There's another acquisition I saw, and I couldn't help but have a good chuckle when I saw it. Most people probably won't recognize the name Wiley Peralta.
Oh, baby.
But I saw that he signed a contract with the Tigers. Now, to my knowledge, Wiley Peralta hasn't really... I don't think he's been active in the actual major leagues now for at least a year and a half. He may have been bouncing around in a minor league system, but essentially he pitched for the Brewers a few years ago. He was actually our opening day starter. And Peralta was somebody that for a few years there looked like he was going to be the ace of the Brewers. I mean, he had a lot of potential. He looked like he had all the makings. He had a nice repertoire. And then I don't know what happened. I think it was just the curse of us starting him on opening day because bad things happen to our opening day starters. And all of a sudden, he just lost it. Went from looking like he was going to be ace material to being absolutely nothing. And I saw that apparently the Tigers have signed him, and he has a shot to make the rotation. I wish the best for Peralta, but if you're a Tigers fan, I wouldn't be too optimistic about a return to form just from what I've seen. But
I mean, if you're a Tigers fan, you can't be too optimistic about anything that they're doing right now.
You've just got to wait. You've just got to wait for the day that Miggy's contract is up. and you've still got a few years for that, unfortunately. So
Yeah. He's basically the Chris Davis of the AL.
he's not quite to that level yet,
Except he
but
can play DH.
yeah, I mean he's more like a Pujols, I'd say. But
Yeah.
except I think he gets injured more than Pujols. So, but
Well, this is something I cannot remember if we've talked about this yet, so I'm just going to bring it up anyway. But Carson Wentz, he is no longer a member of the Philadelphia Eagles. He is now on the Indianapolis Colts and not going to be wearing number 11 because Michael Pittman is a savage. His one receiving touchdown is enough for him to keep the number 11. And Carson's going to have to choose a new number, which honestly I think is good for him. Forget everything, leave everything behind, and just start new. Except also with Frank Reich.
yeah. So I guess the first thing, what did you think of the? What were your thoughts on this trade on for both sides?
Okay, I just want to say I am absolutely happy the Eagles decided to go with Jalen Hurts because I'll tell you right now, I was saying this all year. Jalen Hurts is literally garbage. If you watch any of his tape from Oklahoma, you know he's just turnover prone and pretty much just awful. So good on the Eagles for keeping just another terrible quarterback on their team. Uh, but I don't know. As far as what they got like a third and a second slash maybe a first. Obviously, if it was a first round pick, not going to be that that high. I mean they're yeah, I don't know. This almost seems like a worse deal than the Jared Goff deal, but the Colts didn't have a quarterback to send to the Eagles, so I don't really know. Personally, I think the Colts are going to be good. I think Wentz is going to be good again. Uh, I mean, you take it from one of the worst rosters to one of the best rosters. I don't see how you can't be successful. Uh, Although maybe he just turns into Mitch Trubisky this year, just full send. But
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think this is probably the best place that Wentz probably could have ended up. Like, he gets Frank Reich back, who he did really well under. He goes to a good team who's doesn't have to lean on him. I mean, they've got a great offensive line. Jonathan Taylor looks great. They're going to have Marlon Mack back this year, so they're going to have quite a running game.
they don't even need. If I was the Colts, I would just get rid of Marlon Mack. I would trade him.
I mean,
Just keep Jonathan Taylor and Nehemiah Hines. That's you don't even need Marlon Mack. I think.
I mean, I feel like they've almost got a log jam there. I know you can never have too many solid running backs because they tend to get hurt, but like, I feel like Hines. I mean, Hines is going to be the odd man out in that rotation.
Yeah, but to me, brings more of the balance than Marlon Mack would.
No. I agree, and what I'm saying is I just don't feel like there's enough snaps, like to be fair to all three of them. And I agree. I think I probably move on from Mack. I mean, he's gonna have trade value.
Yeah.
So and Jonathan Taylor, I mean, looked phenomenal at the end of the season there. So, but yeah, and I mean, like you said, for the Eagles, you know, I think, like you said, they made a fantastic decision here deciding to go with Jalen Hurts. If you watch, he doesn't exactly throw a pretty ball. The more he played, you started to see. I mean, he did set. Everybody was like, "Oh, look, Jalen Hurts bringing a spark," but you see that a lot with rookie quarterbacks who no one has film on. I'll be interested to see what happens. I saw the Eagles also intend to bring in competition against him.
I saw they might draft Justin Fields with the sixth pick.
Yeah,
please, please do.
I saw that they might take a quarterback in the first round, and I'm like, well, that would almost defeat this whole purpose. So,
Well, they would go perfect for what they've done so far. I mean, they hire Sirianni, who's like the next, is the right-hand man of Frank Reich, because they want to keep winning. Well, I guess first of all, they fired Doug Peterson, and it's like, okay, once we're keeping you, we fired Doug Peterson, you hated him, you hated each other. Okay, now we're hiring the godsend from Frank Reich, Sirianni, he's going to help you through this. And then, after hiring Sirianni, let's just trade Wentz to the Colts to be back with Frank Reich, and then now let's draft a quarterback because we don't know if Jalen Hurts is actually that good.
I mean, if I'm the Eagles in this case, I think you've picked the wrong quarterback already. But at this point, I am not looking to actively bring in competition for Jalen Hurts if I'm the GM, because at this point, you don't really have a choice other than to stake your reputation and hope that you get something out of Jalen Hurts. Like, I'm not actively looking to take a quarterback, in any of the first 4 rounds.
If I was the Eagles, I would just fire Sirianni and rehire Doug Peterson, but I don't think they're going to do that.
Yeah.
What number do you think Wentz is going to choose? I think he's like number 1, 12, or 14 or something was like his options.
Well, 1 would be McAfee's old number.
He said go ahead.
Yeah. I'm not sure he'll take 1. We'll see.
I feel like he still might end up with number 11.
Yeah, I mean, I don't exactly feel like it's smart to, I don't know. I mean, Michael Pittman, like you said, 1 touchdown. You're really trying to pick a fight with the guy who's going to be throwing you the ball. I agree. I kind of feel like he might still end up with it, but we'll see.
Oh, the other thing I saw potentially just last second, maybe Zach Ertz is going to follow Wentz to the Colts, which that would be interesting. I think he would have to take a discounted price probably, have that happen, but
yeah, he'd definitely have to do that. But I mean, for the Colts, they can get him too. I mean, that'd be, if you're a Colts fan, you got to be excited. So.
Yeah, although I don't think too many Colts fans are excited about having Carson Wentz, but maybe it's a blessing in disguise for them.
I mean, there's worse options out there. Remember, you could have ended up with Mitchell Trubisky.
That's right.
So,
or you could have traded for Nick Foles.
Yeah. I mean, I was really hoping that the rumored trade that turned out to be fake between the Eagles and Bears, which was reported, the report I saw was saying something like it would be like Nick Foles, Tariq Cohen, and a first rounder to the Eagles for Carson Wentz. And I was like, oh boy, Nick Foles back to the Eagles, Carson Wentz to the Bears. And the difference there between the Bears and the Colts is Carson Wentz would have no chance of resurrecting his career with the Bears because the Bears are so awful at developing any sort of quarterback. So.
Well, also, this has just popped into my head as well. I saw J.J. Watts. He's narrowed it down to 3 teams, Mark. The Bills, the Titans, and the Packers. Is he going to go to Green Bay?
He's coming home. Look, all I'm saying is I've seen, right now it's sounding like Aaron Jones may end up with the Dolphins.
Best decision by you guys.
I mean, the Packers have offered him top 5 money. They offered him that earlier in the year. But the thing that Jones didn't like is apparently not much of it was guaranteed, um, which smart move by the Packers. Um, and honestly, Jamal Williams just came out and said, probably with perfect timing, that he would love to be a Packer for life. And Jamal Williams is going to come at a much cheaper price with Jones. And even though I feel like Jones is a better contrasting running back to A.J. Dillon, I'm perfectly happy if we move it forward with, Jamal Williams, as and A.J. Dillon as our running backs. I mean, it'll be sad to see Jonesy go if he does go. But, that was a position the Packers had a lot of depth at. So that would free up some cap space for J.J. Watt. They also did free up some, they cut Rick Wagner, and they cut Christian Kirksey.
Yep.
And then we're probably going to restructure. We still haven't restructured Rodgers' deal. We restructured Bakhtiari's deal because Bakhtiari is probably going to miss a good chunk of this season. And so that Bakhtiari's deal alone saved us $8 million. So, I mean, the Packers are looking like they're getting ready to potentially make some moves. They still have the option of cutting Preston Smith. I don't know if they'll do that. It would make a lot of sense from a cap perspective, but he's also one of the leaders in the defensive locker room. So that would be a tough call, but he would free up a lot of space. So, and it is a position of need. I mean, the Packers can use more defensive line depth, so I don't know. I'd be happy to see JJ come home, but
I think you guys are going to go full send this year, and I can't wait for you to lose in the NFC Championship game again.
How many times have you guys made the NFC Championship?
Yeah, at least we haven't lost.
So are you saying you'd rather never get there at all than get there having a chance to go to the Super Bowl and then losing?
Look, I'm using the LeBron James as trash argument here, or being 0-0 is better than being 0-4 in the. But no, of course I'd rather get there, Mark. But do I have any decision whatsoever? If I was the GM, we would be in the Super Bowl.
Hey, I'm just hoping that somehow maybe once you guys do this Watson and Dak trade.
Oh, please do. I'm back on the train of hating Dak again.
I think I saw something. I think I saw some rumors or something again about like a $42 million thing that Dak wants or something. I don't know how much truth there was, but
we should have just extended Dak after his rookie year for like $25 million a year and been like, hey, we don't know if you're gonna do this again, but here's like more years for cheap.
I mean, you guys could go into like the Fernando Tatis, contract with him. Go 14 years, $340 million. Go big or go home. Hey,
That wouldn't be the worst thing ever.
Jerry's hand doesn't get tired writing checks, remember?
I mean, 14 through that'd be a pretty good deal, honestly.
Yeah.
Obviously, but here's the thing, I don't even mind signing him to a big deal. The thing is that obviously, you're like, oh, the cap penalty hit, Here's the thing, the Rams have shown that just taking the dead cap, it basically means nothing. Like, yeah, you're gonna have 1 year not as good because you have to deal with all the dead cap and crap. But I don't know. I personally, that's why I don't even understand some teams like keeping a player like the Eagles. If they couldn't find anybody to trade, they could have just cut Wentz because they're not going to be any good this next year anyway. So I don't get why some teams just don't cut people, even though they're going to have big dead cap hits. But I don't know. I say just give them the money. That's my thing, is like, there's no one else that we could get that's any better unless we could get Deshaun Watson. and hopefully the Carson Wentz trade maybe devalues Watson a little bit. But because honestly, if he starts sitting out and he actually, he's not bluffing on sitting out, they probably some team could probably get him at a pretty good deal. So I don't know,
Yeah.
but well, honestly, the next thing is the NBA, and this is I might rant here for just a second, but the referees in the NBA are the worst referees in any of the major sports, like even soccer. And I don't even watch soccer, but I feel like they're worse. Uh, Man, it just seems like they've been determining so many outcomes of games lately. Uh, I mean, first of all, like JJ Redick, he had one technical earlier in the game. I forget who the Pelicans were even playing. But then later in the game, he's like driving to the basket and he gets fouled. Like it's not like he fouled someone and started complaining. He gets fouled and then does this, like this spinning kind of bounce pass to the referee, like bounce it around another player or whatever. And the referee is just like not really paying attention. And JJ Redick, he's just like walking to the basket, grabs, and just flips it to the ref without really even paying too much attention. And the referee gives him another technical, and so he gets ejected. And it's like, it's not like, why would you even eject him here? You called the foul for him, not on him. And then the other thing, I was watching the Clippers Nets game, and I mean, the first thing is DeAndre Jordan gets a foul called on him, and I think he fouled like Kawhi or somebody. And Kawhi ties the game with free throws or something, and then James Harden misses a shot or whatever, and then Kawhi gets the ball back and goes down the court and does this little kind of jab step thing, and Harden's like holding Kawhi's left arm, and Kawhi like just kind of like does a little finger roll at the basket, and then James Harden just like lets go of Kawhi's arm and just flops backward, and the ref calls a foul, an offensive foul, and then the Nets win based because they got like free throws off that or something, and I don't know. I was just thinking, how in the world is that a foul? How is the DeAndre Jordan call a foul? What is going? Why is there so many fouls being called? I'm just honestly, it makes the NBA almost unwatchable already more than what it is. Like
Well,
there should be no foul calls in the last minute of any NBA game. That should
well,
be a rule.
there was another outcome that was decided too. What are your thoughts on the Draymond Green technical the other day?
Do you have any more clarification on that?
Oh, they were in overtime, and I forget who they were playing, and basically there was a tip ball at center court with like a minute left in overtime, I believe, and something happened, and like Draymond kind of like threw his arms around, and I mean, we all know how Draymond Green is. He's very expressive. He does deserve some of the technicals he gets. But he got a technical called on him, which was his second technical of the game, so he gets ejected, and whoever they were playing gets free throws and wins the game because of it.
Yeah, that's one where it's like it's the Draymond effect. It's like, okay, if this was anybody else, it's not going to be a technical, but it's because we hate Draymond Green and we think he's a loudmouth and a dirty player or whatever. I don't know.
A lot of
It,
pe- a lot of people that I saw did not feel it warranted a technical foul. That was the thing,
well,
and it wasn't one that was like, there wasn't some, maybe some probability. But I'm just saying it's another game that was, essentially decided by the referees essentially.
right, right, and it's not like they call travels or carries or half, a lot of the, like, I don't know if you saw that one highlight from this past week. LeBron, like, takes one dribble from, like, the other 3-point line and then, like, dunks it. And it's like, he takes, like, 2 steps, dribbles, and then just lets the ball, like, bounce, like, almost up to his head, and then he takes like 2 steps while that happening, and then catches it, and then takes like another 3 steps. So technically, from the time he caught the ball, he took 3 steps, but that's not really how dribbling is supposed to work. You're not supposed to be able to just bounce it and then just run like 4 steps, catch it, and then another few steps, and then dunk it. Like, if they're not, obviously they've been doing that. The referee's been doing that for years, but I just don't understand why. Because then you'll get like a random travel call every so often. It's like, why even call this travel if you don't even call the other travels?
I feel like they just call it randomly just to remind people that traveling does in fact exist. Like,
Oh, I just don't.
you
I
just
get.
no,
Go ahead.
I
Sorry.
get what you're saying. It's very selectively enforced.
And I get like a few years ago they kind of changed the rule with like the Euro step, where it was like, we'll give you 3 steps now. Who cares about trap? But like these ones where it's like 4, 5, 6 steps from like half court. You're never meant to be able to just dribble it up in the air. Like half the players do this, where you just dribble it once, let it bounce up to your head and catch it and then dunk it. Like that's just, I just, I don't know. That doesn't bother me as much, but the referee is just calling so many little ticky tack calls. I mean, they don't half the time they don't even get touched, and then I don't know. I just wish the NBA could call it like college basketball, where they're pretty strict on the traveling, and they're consistent with it, and they don't really call too many ticky tack calls. And then obviously the charge block thing, I mean, I don't think anybody's figured that out in 200 years of basketball or however
No,
long.
no.
So you're going to get what you're going to get with that. But it's more just these ticky-tack, like, oh, he touched me on my wrist when I laid the ball up.
No,
Oh, you
I
didn't
mean,
call it? I'm going to complain. It's just,
no, I mean honestly, yeah, like you said, I like how it's called better in college because typically they'll let them play a little bit more down in the post. You don't see like the ticky tack little crap, getting called as much. They're going to let them play to a reasonable extent. And they do call like the small things, like they'll call carries, they'll call travels, things like that. I just I like that style of basketball a little bit more.
yeah, to me, it just seems like if it's going to be a rule, like you should call it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. But, well, let's talk a little bit about the NBA and maybe a better light, just real quick. I'm just going to throw out all the All-Star players, regardless of conference or whatever, because, I mean, they end up getting, it's Team Durant and Team LeBron this year. A little bit odd saying LeBron with his first name and then Durant's his last name. It should have gone Team Kevin, I think. It would have been more entertaining to say. But yeah, Team Kevin. When's the draft? Oh, it's March 4th is the draft for the All-Star teams. But you have Giannis, Bradley Beal finally makes it in. You have Steph Curry, Luka, Joel Embiid, Kyrie. Nikola Jokic is actually going to be a starter this year, so maybe he'll get to play more than 4 minutes in the All-Star game, which will be nice, in my opinion. You got Kawhi, Jaylen Brown, Anthony Davis, Paul George, shockingly enough, Rudy Gobert, or Gobert, whatever his name is, James Harden, Zach LaVine, Damian
Yeah.
Lillard, Donovan Mitchell, Chris Paul, Julius Randle, Ben Simmons, Jason Tatum, Nikola Vucevic, and Zion. So, quite the interesting roster. Obviously, every year you get, oh, somebody got snubbed or whatever. But at least, Caruso's not in this. But Yeah, and then a little bit different All Star Weekend. They're doing the skills challenge and the 3-point contest before the All Star game, and then they're doing the dunk contest at halftime, and then they're finishing it out. And I believe that they are still doing the thing where once it's the fourth quarter, then it's like the first to 24 points from the higher scoring team wins, I believe. At least I hope they keep it that way from last year, because last year's fourth quarter, I don't know if you watched, it might have been the most entertaining thing the NBA did all year, including the bubble and the playoffs, because I mean it was literally your top like 10 players in the league playing each other, and it was just incredible. No commercials. It was one of the most incredible things I've ever seen from the NBA. I hope they stick with that.
Yeah, no, I know the NBA's. I saw. I think it was 2 years ago. They they realized that they really needed to put in more of an incentive for the All Star game, and I think they upped the cash payouts for it for the winners a little bit. Um, so hopefully, they will return with that change again. Because I mean, when it comes down to it, I mean, if you can get the 10 best guys out there just playing a straight quarter of basketball with no commercials or limited commercials, where they actually seem like they have some incentive to actually go all out, it's extremely entertaining. So
Yeah. And with it being not a timed fourth quarter, at least last year, I mean, they were playing, it was like somebody was at 20 in the game 21, and it was like, okay, it's not time to lock down on this. So, yeah. Oh, and then I just saw Devin Booker will actually replace Anthony Davis, because obviously Anthony Davis is still hurt. Um,
yeah, he was pretty much the only one I saw that a lot of people. He was the one that I saw in all the lists of people saying he was snubbed from the All Star game.
Here's the thing. I don't think Devin Booker's been that good this year, to be honest.
No,
Like he's not really averaged that. I think somewhere around like 20 points. I mean, he doesn't really get a ton of rebounds or a ton of assists. And obviously having Chris Paul there, you're going to kind of lose some of those stats, but
I think he's actually closer to 25 points.
oh,
Um,
okay.
but I think some of his efficiency, at least from earlier in the year, he got off to a slow start. He has been better lately, but he got off to a pretty slow start. So I think some of his efficiency numbers might have been a little bit down. I'm not looking at his numbers right now as we speak, but that would just be my assumption for some of that. But
Yeah. And then as much as I don't like the Nets, actually I kind of do like the Nets, but as much as you would think they wouldn't be good with how bad their defense is, they're on like a 6 or 7 game win streak. Granted, they haven't had Kevin Durant the last like 4 or 5 games, so that's kind of interesting. I don't think that's really Kevin Durant. I just feel like at least whenever they beat the Clippers, like they were playing, like James Harden was playing pretty good defense against Kawhi, and I don't know. I feel like James Harden can step it up on the defensive end and is not quite as bad as what people think he is. And I don't know. I think it's
I think they're better having two out of the three on the court at the same time rather than having all three of them out there at once. And I'm not saying like you bench one for the whole game. And you can start all three of them, but I think having a little bit more of a rotation where, maybe you bring Harden out and you just have Kyrie and Durant out there, with the other guys like Joe Harris out there. You let them out there for a while you bring Harden in for Kyrie, you know, you know, mixing things up a little bit like that, I think will
yeah.
give them a little bit more balance. Um, they do seem to have played a little bit better since Kyrie kind of turned over some of the point guard duties to Harden. So
Yeah, yeah. Honestly, at this point, and especially as they keep playing together, I mean, I don't know who's going to beat them. Even with, even if they're so bad at defense, I don't see how any team is going to really outscore them 4 times in a series.
well, and I mean you're not going to be able to stop all three. Like
We're
you,
right.
you can try to stop Durant, but that's just going to open up more opportunities for Kyrie or Harden. So, I mean, really, you almost have to play them straight. Like,
Yeah, and it's not like, the Clippers, I mean, nobody really thinks of Paul George as like an elite scorer anymore. So it's like, yeah, I think you're totally right on that. Having three is still better than having two good players. So, and I don't see the 76ers being able to sustain like they have been, but
no, I don't either. So, I do think it's right now. Nets are. I mean, as long as they don't have, any major injuries going forward, I think they're in a great spot. Even though you know, previously when they initially made their trade for Harden, I mentioned how awful their defense was, and most people mentioned that too, and I thought that would bring them down a little bit, but obviously defense doesn't win championships anymore. So
well, yeah, I'm not really sure on. It seems like nobody really plays great defense anymore. You just kind of have to shut down, and I think that's why like Kawhi Leonard has been so successful. Just because a lot of times if you can just shut down like one guy, one or two guys, that's pretty much mostly what you need. But,
yeah,
but yeah,
it's just hard to do that when a team has three
right, right.
three superstars. So
But yeah. Well, it's time for my favorite section, the sports we don't care about. And boy, maybe this is one of the few times literally no one cares about tennis because the semifinals and the finals matches were really, really, really boring. Now, the women's one of the women's semifinals between Jennifer Brady, it was like the 25th ranked American, uh, and then I think her name was Muhova, and she was from the Czech Republic. There we go. Uh, and I think she was ranked like number 22 or somewhere in there. That match was pretty entertaining because it went to 3 sets, and the Brady had like 5 match points on the same service game before finally beating her. But Osaka, I think one of the more name brand women's tennis players now. She played Serena in a semifinal match and just absolutely destroyed her, like 6-3, 6-3, something like that. Not even close. I think the match was like barely an hour long. And then on the men's side, semifinals, Djokovic played a guy named Aslan Karatsev, and he was ranked like in the hundreds. Like he had to qualify for the actual tournament, and so nobody expected him to be there. John McEnroe didn't even know who he was. So that was, I mean, obviously just being outmatched there. And then Daniil Medvedev, one of the rising stars, made his second Grand Slam final by beating Stefanos Tsitsipas. And that match was, I mean, Tsitsipas had just beaten Nadal 2 days before in a 5-set match. Granted, Nadal kind of beat himself. But I mean, Tsitsipas had to play 5 sets. You know, it was like 3 or 4 hours long, so maybe not too prepared. And granted, Medvedev could not miss a shot. And in that match, I was thinking, man, if Medvedev plays this good, he can beat Djokovic. And Medvedev, the last couple times they played, had actually beat Djokovic. Granted, they were best of 3 matches, but I don't know. I was thinking he could do it here, but instead, the first set, Medvedev gets his serve broken, which won Djokovic the set 7-5. And then Medvedev came out in the second set, broke Djokovic's serve, and then loses his serve right back. And then from there, Djokovic just took over and won like 6-3, 6-2 the second, third set. Not even close. And then Osaka just absolutely killed Brady. I mean, it was, man, I recorded both of those matches because, I mean, they happened at like 3:30 in the middle of the night in America. Because obviously, you know, these happened in Australia. And, man, I'm glad I didn't wake up at 3:30 for some ridiculous reason to watch them. Because it was so boring. But yeah, I'll be interested to see the French Open because well now Djokovic is at 18 Grand Slam wins. Rafa and Roger both at 20. But if history tells us anything, Rafa will win the French Open and be the first to 21, which is unfortunate if you're a Roger fan. But I will say, in regards to Djokovic, I feel like he's probably going to end up with the most in the end. And literally nobody likes Djokovic. But I don't know. I kind of like him a little bit. But Roger and Rafa fans pretty much hate him because he's kind of cocky. But anyway. And then probably the most depressing news coming out of this week is Tiger Woods was in a single car accident that occurred about 7 a.m. on Tuesday morning in Los Angeles, in which he drifted across the median and eventually crashed and had to be saved by the jaws of life. And he sustained very severe injuries, and apparently he was lucky to live, according to, I guess, the LAPD or whoever ended up saving him. But he sustained crush injuries to both legs, which I advise you to not look up because they look absolutely disgusting. Which obviously we haven't seen his legs, but just crush injuries to the lower legs. Because I hadn't even heard of that type of injury before. And then he also has a shattered ankle in one of, I don't know if it's left or his right, but then in the opposite leg of his shattered ankle, he has a compound fracture of the tibia and the fibula. And you can probably hear my chuckles in there. That's not at Tiger Woods, but more so of how injured he is. Because it's just, man. And those crush injuries, like I said, it's like if you took a log and then pincered the very middle to where you had like no blood flow or anything. So you can just imagine how painful that might be. So honestly, I doubt if he ever plays professional golf ever again, which is unfortunate considering we just had our GOAT rankings a couple weeks ago, and he was on my list, and you said he was honorable mention on yours, so kind of depressing to, just, I mean, kind of like Kobe last year, thank goodness for Tiger and his family that, he didn't pass away in this accident, but at the same time, it's pretty much the end, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, he's 45, I believe. This is going to be a long recovery process. I also saw that this type of injury, these types of injuries, um, always a risk of infection.
Yeah,
We saw
anytime you
that
have,
with Alex Smith.
yeah,
He got it, extended everything. Alex Smith almost died because it almost lost his leg. Hopefully everything goes well for Tiger. You know, I saw some stuff, that there's a possibility, he doesn't regain full function of that leg again. You know, we
well,
obviously hope for the best there. Obviously, Tiger's going to have access to resources, like all the resources, best resources he could have for rehab. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think this is probably the end of his professional playing career. Um, I think I could definitely see a future for him as, an announcer. Or, um, I'm sure he'll find other ways to stay involved in the game of golf. But
yeah,
I'll say you never know. So
yeah. Well, and I just think it's the unfortunate nature of how you play golf. You kind of need the rotation of your lower body and obviously your legs and your feet. That I don't know. I hope he can get back for like some sort of charity event at some point down the road. And I don't know. Maybe he is gonna be the next Alex Smith and do something absolutely no one thinks he can do. I really hope he can. But it'll be a long road for him.
yeah.
So. And I will add, it is nice looking back now that he got one last Masters win, a couple years ago. And, it's always nice to see, kind of your GOAT or, your for sure top two of a sport get that one last kind of desired victory. And the way, he hugged his kids after that was obviously heartwarming.
Well, and even that was, sort of a comeback from him.
Yeah,
He had a rough couple years there. He had a lot of injuries throughout that time period with his back, and so even he overcame a lot to just get that too. So
yep, yep. And unfortunately, I mean, golf is one of those sports where you almost need a really dominant player for someone, for average casual watchers to really sit down and watch. Because, I mean, I don't think some of these guys now are going to be able to pull in the viewership that Tiger Woods has been able to. So, kind of just a bad day for golf in general. But,
yeah. Well, it's kind of a depressing note to end on.
yeah, well, you have anything happy to end on, Mark? Maybe an MLS joke. You got one off the top of your head?
Unfortunately, I don't. I typically just don't. I mean, it's hard to think of MLS jokes because the league as a whole is just so forgettable.
I know.
But I will say, I mentioned it to Jonas last week. I am thinking about asking and getting a special guest here on the show. I'm not going to give a name yet. Who can maybe help change our minds a little bit and maybe help open us up to the world of soccer a little bit. So maybe sometime in the next couple episodes, you'll get to hear a little that little treat. I'm sure that'll be quite an interesting episode if it happens.
I'm sure, because I don't know if I would rather go into that looking up things about just how do you play soccer or just completely, not knowing anything.
Look, I've played soccer in junior high and high school, so I know how the game works. I just don't know how anyone can stand to watch it. So, that's kind of the perspective I'm going to be looking for. I'm going to go in. I'm not going to research anything ahead of it, but we'll that'll be a nice little surprise for you when we do that. So think of those happy thoughts, because I'm sure you can just imagine what I'm gonna have to say about that.
Yeah, I'm just hoping I don't fall asleep. But, well, I guess thank you for listening once again. Mark, you have anything to say?
Yeah,
about
no, just we appreciate you listening. Make sure if you want to have more frequent updates. We're not publishing a ton right now because there's not a whole lot of breaking news right now. But you can follow us on Instagram at MJ_sports_podcast. You can also, search for us on YouTube. We're also on all other streaming platforms. So, and, if you ever have a question or have a topic you want us to discuss, you can always comment on Instagram or YouTube, or you can send us an email at mjsportpodcast@gmail.com.
That's right. We're slowly trying to get more content out there, and more stuff like polls on the Instagram page and whatnot to be a little bit more interactive. So
yeah, but for now, this has been episode 4 of the MJ Sports Podcast. Thank you for listening, and we'll be back next week.